Okay, you can see 12 minutes on the clock up there. So we're going to be talking about the introduction. What's going wrong? Because let's face it, something is going wrong. And this is why I do what I do and why I've done it for so long. I discovered a good few years ago now that despite everything that's happening in terms of running videos and new shoes and new treatments and types of foam rollers and all of this incredible stuff and technology and ways of running, the actual incidence of running injury, as in how often runners are getting injured, hasn't really come down. Okay, and this is looking at the research since the 80s when research into the prevalence of running injury started. Years later, okay, still as many runners are getting injured. Some of the studies suggest that the number of running related injuries per 1,000 hours of running between 3 and 59. That depends on what you regard as a running injury. So is a blister a running injury, for example? So that's why there's 3 or 59. But if we take a middle figure of like 30 or something per 1,000 hours, that means that's an average of 3 injuries every 20 weeks. Okay, if that was happening in any other sport, you would give up the sport. What is it about running that means that this amount of runners are still running into problems and having to seek help, not being able to run for ages, and just meet that frustration I'm sure that we all, and you, the listener, feels. The big take home for me, and hopefully for you now, is that, as I've said here, despite all the advice and adverts and promises, all the advances in technology, runners are still getting injured. So we're either doing something very wrong or we're missing an integral piece out of the equation. Make sense? Okay. Moving on to the next slide, I am going to be showing research because it's not that I want to bore you to death with the science, but it helps us understand why things are going wrong. And this is a very important paper, which it's from 2014. There's been some very good papers since. I talked to Manuela Besomi the other day on her podcast, actually, in Spanish. If you do speak Spanish, then check that out, Manuela Besomi. She's had a paper recently which kind of backs this up as well. It's all about what do runners believe are the risks for injury. And when we look at this, we'll go to the Sarotto paper in 2014. You can see that the top 6 are very interesting in terms of how much evidence is there for them, or maybe they're not true at all. So not stretching enough was near the top. Okay, runners believe that the reason they're injured is they don't stretch enough. We're going to be talking about that in a couple of episodes of these 12-minute episodes, devoting all the time to that because it's a big subject which I need to tell you lots about. Cutting the long story short, runners overstretch. Okay, simple as that. I'm going to give you information as to why. One of the episodes will be about stretching for your warm-up. Does it reduce injury? Does it help your performance? One of the episodes will be about stretching after your run. Does it help reduce soreness? Does it help reduce the risk of injury afterwards? Does it improve your recovery? You may be surprised at the answers. Okay, and we'll be looking at maybe alternatives. And we'll be looking at stretching for your rehab. Is stretching actually helping you get better and recover from your current injury or pain issue? You'll be surprised again at some of the things I've got to tell you. Wearing the wrong shoes was very high up in this list. Again, I don't want to suggest that everything you've been told is wrong. I don't even like using the word myth anymore. Okay, but there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And the runners who I see with people come to me because it hasn't worked somewhere else. That's what I do, especially with my online consultation and my gait analysis at Stride UK. I see a lot of people who obviously things haven't worked. That's why they found me at Runchatlive and they want me to try and delve in and see what's going wrong. So I'm really interested in the things that haven't worked. And wearing the wrong shoes is a big one. Runners believe that if they find the right shoe, they won't get injured. And we're going to do a whole session on that. We'll look at how much we know about choosing the right shoe. We'll look at this idea, which is still prevalent in the running industry and also fed to you by many therapists, about overpronation, oversupination, a neutral runner. Because there's still 3 shoes on the market which are sold to you with the idea that if you're an overpronator, buy this shoe and it will reduce your risk of injury. Okay, we're going to do a whole episode on that, believe me. And again, it will surprise you how not just the evidence is weak, the evidence shows that no, it has to go. looking at somebody on a video of them running, looking at their feet and deciding whether they overpronate is difficult enough in itself. There's lots more going on than the naked eye can see. And also giving them a shoe to correct that overpronation is another subject which, well, look forward to the episode. I don't want to give too much from it now. What do we got? 6:38. Right. Excess of training. Well, this is good news. At least some runners realize that doing too much is a problem. Okay, but it's not that easy to avoid doing too much, isn't it? How do you measure your load? Okay, and what different types of load are there? Is it all about how often you run, or how fast you run, or the frequency, the duration? What about other types of load? Do we take into account mental load? Is that something which can affect injury or slow things down or increase the risk of injury? There'll be a whole episode on that and some great answers, hopefully, which will help a lot of you either reduce the risk of injury, get out of injury, and in doing so, improve your performance. Not warming up was a big one. Again, we're looking at beliefs that runners have of what reduces the risk of injury. Well, like I say, I mean, the warming up goes hand in hand with stretching. Okay, there's going to be a lot of surprises for a lot of runners, which is good, because that's what these episodes are going to be about. Hopefully, I'm going to give you other ways of thinking and looking at the situation. Because like I say, for a lot of runners, what's being told to you at the moment and what you're reading and hearing from either therapists you visit and pay money to, or from fellow runners in the great communities out there, it's not quite painting the whole picture, and some of it's just wrong. Okay, so hopefully I'm going to gain your confidence over the 30 days that are coming up, and you're not going to feel kind of that I'm picking on you and just making you feel stupid. It's not that at all. Believe me, you're not alone in believing the things which people have shown in this study. There's so many forces out there, and DVDs and books and podcasts which are reinforcing these ideas. Okay, so don't feel stupid. Anyway, not warming up. We'll talk about that. Do you need to do anything? Does it depend on what you're doing? What about dynamic stretching? Or should it be called dynamic stretching? Okay, what do we do to warm up? Can we do anything to reduce the risk of injury? We'll see. Lack of strength was number 5 on this paper. Very interesting strength. We'll do at least 1 or 2 episodes on that. A lot of runners are starting to realize that strength work is important. Maybe not for everybody, and this is another thing we'll talk about. Just because the particular runner in your club doesn't do any strength work and they never get injured doesn't mean that you can't. A common theme in this will be you are an individual. We are all individuals, and what works for you and your body with your unique makeup, your unique past, your unique beliefs will be totally different than what works for somebody else. This will be a very, very common thing. When it comes to strength training, the links with performance are fantastic. I'll give you a spoiler now with no alert. But how do we get rid of this idea that strength training is going to make us big and bulky and make us heavier? Is that true? Is there evidence for that? What type of strength training should we be doing? Do the exercises need to be complicated? How many reps and sets should I do? How many times a week should I do strength training? Do I have to go to the gym? Loads of questions which I hear runners asking every day. And unfortunately, like I say, they're getting the wrong answers from a lot of places. Okay, the only reason I don't know all the answers, but all I'm going to do is offer you what the evidence says. And this is why the evidence is so important. It's going to tell us what is more likely to work. It might not tell us what's definitely going to work, but it's going to lead us down a path which will save us from those, whatever I said it was, 3 injuries every 20 weeks or something. Okay. And also the evidence will show us what doesn't probably work. So we can dismiss things. We can start narrowing down. At least what I like to say is we'll learn how to do things less wrong. Okay. We don't know what causes many running related injuries. Okay. The biomechanics doesn't give us all the answers. Okay. And that is fact. And anyone who tells you different is leading you down a little bit of a rabbit hole. It's still a mystery, the human body, and why one runner can wear these pair of shoes and not get injured. Another one wears this pair of shoes and can't do more than a mile. We don't know why some runners have knees pointing in, knees pointing out, and they will get injured. Others do exactly the same thing with their body and they don't get injured. Okay, it's a bit of a mystery. All we can do is have a look at the evidence, have a look at what happens in clinic, have a look at what the actual runner believes, and put the 3 together and come up with a best strategy for you, which is what we try and do. I say we myself and my colleagues. But a lot of therapists are not doing this, which is why I work and my colleagues work with a lot of therapists trying to educate and update traditional schools of thought, which we've moved on from. Okay, and we'll be talking about that along the episodes as well. How do you find a modern therapist? What alarms should you watch out for thinking, like, this therapist isn't really up to date? They might be a lovely person, but if they're telling me that this is happening when they put their hands on me, or that this is the problem, then I'm going to give you some alarm bells. Okay, it might mean you have to change therapists. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Some therapists don't have the time or the patience or the inclination to update, and they're still talking about things which we talked about, and I talked about 5-10 years ago, even 2 years ago. Okay, so it's going to be a big thing. I've got 1 minute, 18 seconds left. Not respecting the body's limitations. This will be another thing which is kind of tied in with therapists. A lot of the time you're given the explanation that you can't run because your body is this shape, this posture. You've got one leg longer than the other. Your pelvis tilts this way. You've probably heard lots of them. Your glutes aren't firing. All sorts of things. Which we call it structuralism, to take a word from other people. But structuralism is a really important thing, which we'll talk about. Sometimes we worry too much about our posture and the way we're put together, and we blame that for injuries and pain, and we shouldn't do necessarily. By doing that, we're missing out on other stuff. As it said at the conclusion of this study in the last 30 seconds, education may play an important role in reducing running-related injury. Therapists are educators. Okay, we facilitate, we help show you what you're doing wrong, and that's something we're going to talk about a lot. We can't fix you with our hands. Okay, I'm sorry. You lie down on the couch, people do things to you. We'll talk about that later on. Right, 8 seconds left. I hope that's given you an idea as to what this is going to be about. This has been the introduction. If you have got any questions at all, then you can email me, matt@runchatlive.com, or just go along to www.runchatlive.com and fill in the contact form there. Take care, and we'll see you for episode 2.